This is another tool for my class in Arlington next week. And usually I will use sanding paddles about this size, about 4 inches long, a little over an inch wide. And I make these for students. And usually one side is pretty rough. It's 60 to 80 grit. And the other side, usually it's like 320, but I think this is a 240. And remember, when you use a sanding paddle to reshape hammers, you're going to go in this motion. And I'm going slow, so you can see, usually I'm really going fast when I do this, but go in this motion and you're going to bring a bead up. You're going to be able to see that work up all the way to the top. And I usually don't go all the way over. I'll explain that in a little bit. But don't do this. This is what I see a lot of beginners doing. That's not right. You want to bring that bead up, and you're actually taking off, theoretically anyway, you're taking off a layer of felt. So anyway, that's what I've been using for years and years, is 320, sometimes 240 on one side and 80 or 60, really rough there. And I have a video on YouTube. It's number 28, actually 2 videos, number 28 and 29, shows you upright hammers, how I file those as well. And it's called Hammer Shaping in 20 Minutes, or 10 minutes. Can't remember which one, but 10 minutes you can do a rough sculpting of most of the hammers in the grand piano. Now this is what I'm using, and it's called a new material called Abranet. And it's a really cool material, and I've got Velcro down here it sticks to. The thing about this is you can sand wood or felt or whatever, and it really does a great job. And by the way, this is 150 and the other side is 240. But it doesn't gather up in there. You just go like that and all the dust falls out of it. So it's a very good material. And you can go up to 600 grit, down to, I think, 80 grit is the best, the lowest, the roughest grit that they have. But I really like this Abranet. And each one of you in the class should get one of these, I hope, if I have enough. I should mention that one of my Yamaha technician friends had one. He was from Japan, and he showed me his paddle. And he said he had the same paddle for 30 years without changing the sandpaper, because you don't press really hard on it. But if you use it for other things like wood, well, of course you're going to wear it out and you're going to dirty your hammers. So if you take good care of the sanding paddle, and if it's really good sandpaper, it should last you years and years. I also want to mention that when I do hammers, you see the lines that I drew in here to kind of simulate the grooves. What I like to do when I file hammers is I'll file all the way over on one side, and I'll file off 1/3 of the string cuts or the string grooves or the string marks, whatever you want to call them. And then I'll go on the other side and file 1/3 off, so that all that's left is 1/3. And the reason I do that, a lot of people say, well, you need to go all the way over. And that's the European way of doing it, but you really don't. You can do this very easily, 1/3 on one side, 1/3 on the other, but I leave this third because when I'm mating hammers to strings, I'll lift my strings and try to get them perfectly level, but when you push the hammer against the string and it goes bump, bump, ring, you know that the left and center, you need to take a little bit off the hammer. You can keep pulling and pulling on these strings sometimes, trying to lift them, and they don't lift. So sometimes we have to level the hammers or mate the hammers to strings by taking off these string marks. So let me show you that real quick. I don't use some of the other tools that other people use. I just use one thing. I use this sanding paddle, and I can do that. Like if I want to take off the middle string cut, I put my thumbnail over that, over the center and left, and I go ahead and in the same motion you would when you're filing. Now I'm not going to do it, but you would take that mark off, and all you need to do is take off a tiny, tiny bit of that, and it will mate the hammer to the string, or the hammer will be fitted to the string. And let's say I want to take off the center only. Well, then what I'll do is put my thumbnail over the left string, and then I'll just tilt the paddle just a tiny bit, and that's all I need to do. Now I've taken off a little bit of material there. So if that was pressing against the string, I've taken off that. Of course, I want to take the right two or the left and center, that is. I could do whatever I want with that sanding paddle. It's very easy to do. So to repeat, let's say on this one here, I want to just take off the left string mark. I'll tilt it slightly, just come up over and take that off. It's that easy. Now, I'm going to show you these other tools that people have made. They're really nice, and I'll use these sometimes on upright pianos, but This is one that will take off all 3 strings, and it will really square the hammer well. Now, this is another tool. You can do all 3 strings with this, or you can do the right or left with this one, flip it around, and then if you want to get the center string, this one will get the center string mark, just like that. It's very easy to use. I just don't like fiddling with it, and I drop things, and so I prefer one tool, a paddle, and I use that on everything. Now, some people will cut small strips of sandpaper and go over it like this. And you see, I can't even hardly do it because it drives me crazy working with little things like this. No, just give me my sanding paddle and I'll just take it off the way I always do. I don't need the little strips. And then there's a little thing that someone made with plexiglass and one of these in the middle, and that's the same thing, you know. You can use that, and I like that a little better than this, but these little things like this, my clumsy hands, I just can't use them. Now, another thing I want to tell you is that in the videos that you watch on me filing hammers, I will use a large paddle. I believe in gang filing them, and I use that just like I would a single one. I'd bring a bead up and go around. I need to point out, though, that you need to resurface a hammers often and not let them get flat. You can resurface a hammer, just take a little bit off the sides, about 20, 30 times sometimes on a hammer, and keep them really fresh and a nice, good, well-shaped hammer. Another thing, too, is if you start going over and it becomes a little bit rough, some hammers don't want to be filed one direction. You need to go the other direction. But what I learned from my Japanese friends, especially the one that had the paddle that was 30 years old, he says, just go softer, just go lighter. And he showed me how he uses the same paddle, and it's quite a harsh grit on it. I think it was like 80 grit. And he made that hammer look wonderful with that grit. So just go softer and it will be smoother. But I use, like I said, 240, and that helps me get a really smooth looking hammer. So for me personally, and for you, the class, I don't use these. I don't really use these. They're great things, but I use one tool, and I don't have to carry a whole bunch of stuff around with me. And this is called Abranet, A-B-R-A-N-E-T.